It's just a constantly growing and changing industry that will always need people. Always. Because any company that exists has logistics, so they need people.
So today we're going to talk to student Holden Reine and instructor Michael Fernandez about supply chain management and logistics, which is a new program here at ACC. Okay, so Holden, tell me what supply chain and logistics management is.
Just about any business, any company has supply chain and logistics. And it's not just one area. You know, purchasing, there is a logistics area.
Well, it's like different divisions will have their own.
Yeah, there's different divisions within logistics.
Exactly.
Yeah. The job that I'm at currently, I'm in inventory and warehousing. So I work at Carl Storrs Endoscopy, and we make medical computers and endoscopes and everything like that. And immediately I'm in charge of inventory and supplying the production team with the parts that they need to build their products.
Okay.
But I also work alongside shipping and receiving, which is another area of logistics, and warehousing.
Michael, when people hear those words, it's such an abstraction for people to hear, like supply chain management, logistics, and stuff.
Okay, yeah, you're exactly right, because it's like, what is supply chain? What does that do? So the easiest way we come out to thinking about talking to people about it is think about your everyday life and everything that it impacts your everyday life. It's in your everyday life. It's food, it's clothing, furniture, whatever that may be. That is supply chain. Everything that goes into that, you wouldn't have that if we didn't have a supply chain, logistics, and everything.
So it's about the movement of products.
It's the movement and the storage.
Yeah.
Storage.
Okay.
Very, very important storage. You want to. Yeah, inventory is a really, really important part. I mean, all of them. All the parts are so important, but inventory is important because you have to factor in the space that you need, and that factors into your cost, your overall cost. Something we learned in class, and that Michael, our professor, just really tried to nail into our brains: total cost of ownership, which is the total cost of owning a certain thing. And you factor in, it's in your inventory, how much like each individual piece of, let's say, a toy, each individual piece of that toy that it takes to build it, all goes into the total cost of ownership.
And like how much you have, and when it gets down to a certain level, you need to have more now, and so you have to kick everything in place from that point on. So what does it involve, like skills wise? Like what do you have to be kind of good at, or what do you learn about in order to manage that?
I think it definitely depends on the position and the area that you're going to be in, because most of the people who are hands-on are in the warehouse. Anybody else, most other fields like purchasing, are going to be in an office. So I think one skill that's good for anybody in logistics is knowing how to use a computer. If you are comfortable with like learning different programs, and it's not like something super advanced, as long as you can read a screen and you can type, like not with one finger at a time.
But basically navigating is sort of
navigating, because we use something called ERPs, which is an enterprise resource planning system. And for example, my company, Carl Storrs, uses SAP, which is a really, really popular one.
That's an industry standard, I think, for a lot of places.
That's about it.
SAP.
SAP, Oracle, and I mean, there's tons others. I went to a convention with Michael and a few of my classmates, and there was a lot of companies that are still to this day coming out with new ERP systems. And they're
because they all have to be tailored to what industry they're working in. I mean, that's
exactly.
That's why they vary, I think, from place to place.
Well, they vary a lot. But so as long as you can get comfortable with navigating something like that, then you can really fit into any position.
So Holden, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you're from, how you wound up at ACC.
Okay. Born and raised in Texas. Pearland, Texas. I've always lived in the area. And went to Pearland High School, so right next to Alvin. And I wanted to figure out something, find some type of idea before I went to a 4-year and kind of spent a lot of money to find that out.
Smart man.
So I found, I was actually in a few classes with Alvin in high school.
Okay, yeah, dual enrollment.
Yeah, dual credit and everything. So I was already enrolled at Alvin, so, it was an easy choice to just come to the school. Mm-hmm. And that's when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to study. Spoke to an advisor, and she was going through, all the programs that we had here, and she went over logistics. And I was like, okay, well, I kind of have an idea of logistics.
People just assume that it's like traveling or like moving
it's
things.
Always on the news. They always talk about it on the news.
And we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah. Yeah, and she spoke about logistics program, how it was a new thing, that just started. And I was kind of interested in it because the job that I had at the time, I was in a warehouse, a lighting fixture company. So I did some shipping and receiving with them as well. And it was kind of interesting to me, like, exactly, the impact that you can have personally on a product. Mm-hmm. You can make a product with your company, and that product goes anywhere around the world, and you're the one who made that, and like tons of other people are using it, and they have their hands on it. And that's something that fascinated me. So she was talking about it, and then she also mentioned that it's just a constantly growing and changing industry that will always need people, always, because any company that exists has logistics, so they need people.
What was about it that drove you to it? Like, what did you enjoy about it that was just like, okay, this is what I want to do?
I think it's the scope. Like I said earlier, so many different products at any company, just how far it can go. And then there's also the items that come in to your company. And I think it's interesting how so many different companies can be connected together, and then that comes out into a final product that goes to consumers. Those consumers take it home, they use it, or it's in the industrial aspect, and different companies use it. And I think it's just so interesting. Like, in this room that we have right now, this table came from a company, and that company purchased items from different companies, and those companies purchase items from different companies.
So it's kind of basically what makes everything work.
Yeah, everything. You can look at anything in the room that you're in at any moment and at any given time and dissect it, and it'll come from hundreds of different companies that have their hands on each individual thing.
Right. And so you just kind of like feel like, all right, well, I'm a part of that process that that gets it here.
And I just want to know. I want to look at different things and just kind of think about where they came from. And that interests me.
So you were talking about like being able to kind of work with like different software platforms and that kind of stuff. But in the program, what else do you kind of work with in the program?
We did actually in class mess around with the ERP system a little bit. Michael pulled it up on the screen, and we all saw sort of how you can go into like different folders and everything like that.
Michael, so what skills does somebody need to do this? I mean, because again, when people hear this, is it a math thing? Is it an engineering thing? Is it because I mean, it's regularly involved in STEM conversations about STEM courses and education. So what the education part of it, what does that entail?
Very good question. Because just like you mentioned, finance, you think about everything. You think about finance type stuff. We think there's different stuff. Engineering, you think about mathematics and stuff like that. And the way we talk about it a lot is all those functional areas have goals, and what they're basically trained to think about is priorities and stuff like that.
Right.
Supply chain is right in the mix of that. They're right in the middle of it because they have to marry everybody's different goals together to come to a solution. So it's kind of what we talk about in the class and everything as well. Is it's every day is a different day because you're having to make everything happen. It's like they throw you a whole bunch of pieces of puzzles, and the supply chain people have to put those puzzles together regardless if they actually fit perfectly or not.
Right. So. This is one of those industries where, this is something that everybody has to have on staff because you have to be able to move things that you need and bring things in and ship things out, and not just your end product. It's the things you need to make your product. So, and that kind of vital basically to just about anybody who makes something?
You're exactly right. It could be a service. or it could be somebody that makes something. We talk about it a lot of times. You look at a law office and you're thinking, wow, they don't have supply chain people. But yeah, you do. You have all the books, all the equipment that goes into it, everything else that happens. Same thing at the doctor's office and all the rest of them. Anything you do. And it's interesting you talk about that because we talk about where that role falls into. I had a student, and she's talking about she works at a restaurant, and the restaurant has a big chain, a fairly good-sized chain, and they just start ordering stuff. We're really busy because we're opening. They start ordering a lot of stuff, and they just keep ordering that stuff. Well, now all of a sudden their inventory is stacked up so high. They don't realize supply chain and the impact all that has to do. And like I talked about purchasing the things that you did and everything else, but all the inventory, all the warehousing, all the ordering, everything that goes into that. So it's huge. It's a big different, and it's a different skill set than just normal numbers.
Okay. For a couple years there, like people kept hearing supply chain in the news, often, with anger. But and I kind of thought, I personally thought it was like a bit of a scapegoat most of the time. But I mean, kind of, either one of y'all explain to me, like, what was happening in that sector of the market where it was just affecting prices and everything like that? And has it changed? I mean, are we still kind of in the midst of that situation, or has it been alleviated, or what? Are you fixing the problem?
Me personally.
Yeah.
I believe what you're referring to was the trucking problem, the driver shortage, as they called it, and also the issues that we had with receiving shipping containers specifically from China and just overseas in general, really. One of the problems, from my understanding, was a lot of containers coming back at the same time, and then we had a lot going on in like the docks and everything like that.
It's a bit of a bottleneck, basically.
Yeah, and that combined with the driver shortage, with coming off of COVID, and a lot of truck drivers were either retiring or realizing that they don't want to go back because of the time that they spent with their families.
Right.
So that combined and kind of created a problem, like you said, the bottleneck at the docks and everything like that, where there just wasn't enough happening to have the containers going to where they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I mean, it kind of drove that. We talked about it for years in supply chain, that there's a perfect storm brewing, and it just needed that big issue that occurred, like the pandemic or something like that. Back about 2012 or so, I think it was, there was 2012, 10, somewhere, there was a tsunami that hit Japan that really affected the supply chain as well, but that was just still setting that in one little area. This was huge.
Well, it's kind of cascaded out of control.
Exactly. So, like Holden said, all those things that were coming into play already, the driver shortages, the container issues, just compounded at that point. And then we looked at other things like just in time. We talked about that finance, that other area where the skill set comes from, the finance and those roles like that. Just in time was important because we reduced inventory costs and stuff like that. So then that hit because now we're just in time wasn't going to work when we shut down for COVID. So you had all those aspects fall into play, and all the offshoring that we were doing and all that was happening. We had nowhere to go, nowhere to get it from.
The issue with the supply chain, has it been alleviated, you feel like, or is it still going on? Like, what are you seeing in the workforce?
Currently at my job, I feel like it's been alleviated to a point. There's still after effects. It's changed how people order ahead. Before, people could order like more just in time, or with less ahead, but now you have to order a few months or possibly a year, depending.
So people are being having a much longer outlook on things rather than.
But it depends on the
being
product.
More reactive.
Yeah, it depends on the product that they're ordering for. Yeah.
If somebody was interested in this program, what would you tell them that they kind of need to be prepared for? Just not only just like in the workforce, but like to be a student and kind of what they need to do before they come in.
Well, I'd say that's a good thing about supply chain, about logistics and supply chains. There's so many different areas you can go into. If you want to go into just doing working in a warehouse, doing some inventory stuff, managing, you could be our IT type, where you're just doing your own focus, your own thing. You're not having to manage people. Holden and I talked about it early on when he's talking about what he wanted to do. Was do you want to manage people or you just want to manage processes? So you can manage just processes and you don't have to deal with the issues of having to manage people. It's a whole different thing. So you can go either way in that kind of direction. And it also has So with that, it's like an everyday happening. Again, it's not like if you go into a process type thing, well, then you're kind of doing the same thing and you're kind of just improving what the process are and things like that, managing inventory. Or you can go to the people part of it. You can go into the shipping and transportation piece of it to where it's different every day. So they can look for different things, and what their interest is because it can be something that they enjoy doing a challenge every day, or something they're comfortable with, just kind of not, I don't want to say repetitive, but a comfortable build of what they're working on consistently. I always tell people it's kind of like the piece where we talk about travel the world, join the military, supply chain. You get to meet a lot of people. The difference in most of the functional areas is you work more externally than you work internally in an organization. So you get to meet a lot of different people from different parts of the world, and maybe even travel and do things like that.
I appreciate y'all talking to me today. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. To read about these stories and more, visit alvincollege.edu/news.